Welcome back to In Doug's Garden, brought to you by Davey Tree. And as always, thank you so much for spending some time with us away from your garden. I sure appreciate it. Today we're going to see an amazing garden called the Iron Garden at Carrie Furnace. It's like nothing you've seen before. I'm answering some questions and there's something you should grow, but do me a big favor. Like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Thanks.
Tell me how this steel mill became what it is today.
Right. So where we are, Carrie Furnaces number 6 and 7, they're National Historic Landmarks. But from 1884 to 1982, they made iron on this site. And that iron was shipped across the river after 1898 over to Homestead, where it was converted into steel. And that steel is what built America. And created the middle class and all of those things that we know about Pittsburgh history. But in the late 80s, when everything was shutting down, U.S. Steel sold this property and Homestead to a scrapper who started tearing it all down. And it's at that point that our organization was born, to save this site and some other pieces of the Homestead works, because this is our history. This is the story of this region. This is what built this region, and it can serve as an economic driver to really help rebuild the region. So it was a long time coming. It took a number of years, but we have been stewards of this site since 2010, and we're doing a lot of restoration work and moving it forward, having concerts here, having events here, and most importantly, doing our tours and bringing people through and raising the profile of this site, the profile of this region, and showing that this is a remarkable region and a vibrant region, and one that can exist into the 21st century and beyond.
It seems obvious now to preserve this site, and we see how wonderful it is, but it wasn't obvious back then. What was the reaction when your organization came together and said, we want to save this place?
Look, the reaction was, are you nuts? Okay, if we can't work there, we don't want to see it. Get rid of it. Do something new. And it took a while to get traction. I started with this organization in 1998. And even when I started, there was still a fair amount of resistance. What we see now is the exact opposite. It's people thanking us for doing this, wanting to be part of it, because we can't do any of this without the communities around here, without the people around here. This isn't, Rivers of Steel doing everything. It's all of us doing it. This is a regional and a national story, and it takes everybody being involved. So it's that transformation, that catharsis that had to happen, where the region had to understand that the history and the background is important, and to remain vital as a region, we have to have that link to the past and to the future.
Tell me about the genesis of the Iron Garden, because from the Iron Garden we have one of the best views of the furnace. Yeah,
it's phenomenal, and it's like a lot of things here, and to use a pun, it's very organic in how it happened. Where we're standing are where furnaces number 1 and 2 were. Little ambiance. This was, when we got here, pretty rough, and we tried to bring machinery in and clean things up. The whole site was rough. There were trees growing out of everything and just all over the place. But we kept breaking machinery in here and realized that, okay, we can't really do much here. Let's just leave it. But then things started to happen. We had all this great growth and these, nature coming back in. We're seeing deer bedding down in here. Listen for a second, you've got all these birds. You have this wonderful rebirth. And so we kind of weren't really doing much and thinking that, maybe we could do something cool with it. And like a lot of things, there was a fortuitous visit with Rick Dark, and he came and was talking to us about this site and what our plans are, and he's like, this is a really cool spot. This is an opportunity to show not just people in this region, but all over the country, what you can do with a natural landscape by learning to manage the landscape rather than conquer it. He said, people spend millions of dollars to make it look like this, and you guys just have it. So we went through and we kind of cut these trails in and set it so that you get these wonderful reveals. This is hands down my favorite spot on this site, hands down. You get all of the facets of this region, all of that story of rebirth and rejuvenation and how nature is just incredibly strong, juxtaposed against this, which for me is one of the most beautiful sights in the world.
Ron, it's been concerts, movies, TV shows filmed here, probably things I can't even remember. Tell me how proud you are that this is all happening here.
You know, it's incredible. When we started this effort in the 80s and through the 90s, you know, we had this idea of a national park and doing all these sort of things, but we didn't really know. Is it going to work? Is it going to, you know, gain traction? But the fact that people come from all over the world to take tours here, we just had, you know, over 10,000 people here last weekend, you know, going to concerts. We've had movies filmed here, TV shows, weddings. You know, it is rewarding. It is sometimes a little amazing to me, but it means a lot to us as an organization and a lot to these communities that people are coming here and that it means so much to them and that they connect back to it.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the garden, how much growth you've seen here since you let nature take over.
Yeah, it's got this ebb and flow, just like the world. I mean, where, you know, we started with grasses and moss and ferns and these lower leafy things, and now look at the trees. You know, they're all coming in, it's filling in, it's beautiful. We have grasses that are starting to grow here that, look, we didn't plant any of this, none of it. It is just what nature is doing. And it changes with the seasons, it changes year to year. So just like everything else, it's not static. And that, to me, that's what makes it wonderful and beautiful, and we learn something new every time.
Talk a little bit more about that, what this once was, and this is so just calming.
Right.
You know, when that thing was going, and you were standing here in 1 and 2, I'm sure you couldn't hear yourself talk.
Oh, no, not at all. I mean, this was, you know, a working mill site. Whether it's a blast furnace or a steel mill, doesn't matter. It is an all-sensory place. There's, you know, it's loud, it's stinky, it's sooty. It is, every sense is overtaken. One of my favorite lines of all time, and we've done a lot of interviews with steel workers through the years, and I ask that question. What was it like? What was that first day like? What did it feel like? You know, now what is it like when it's gone? My favorite line of all time is, you know, I asked a steel worker that, and he said, you know, I never knew how loud it was until it all stopped. You know, and so to have a place like this that is so much a juxtaposition to this is, you know, part of the beauty of what's happening here. And that nature is resilient, just as this region and people are resilient, and they really, it all fits into that big puzzle. This isn't just the story of industrialization. This is the story of post-industrialization and what happens to the landscape, what happens to the people, and what happens to the community.
Tell me a little bit about the signage.
We've got amazing signage here, and it's, we're actually, this is the 10-year anniversary of the Iron Garden, which, you know, gets its name from the fact that we are in an iron plant, but also because we cast panels here telling the story of the rebirth of this region, the rebirth of this site, looking at how it all evolves, telling the story of the ecology here. We cast them on site, made out of iron. There are 10 of them around the site. A new one's going to be added this September. So, well, actually, I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. A new one's going to be added this October at the Festival of Combustion. And so we have a festival every year where we cast iron, we cast aluminum. People can come and, you know, do glass work and ceramics and all kinds of things and tour the site. And as part of that, we'll be casting a new panel for this, and looking back over the change from the last 10 years.
And it's a partnership with the Hunt, right?
With Hunt Botanical, with the Master Gardeners, with DCNR and National Park Service.
Talk about the artwork.
So this is all iron artwork. Majority of it was made on site, and designed by artists who either work with the organization or have partnered with the organization. So there are more pieces going in this year.
Really cool.
Yep, oh yeah,
really
it's
cool.
Fantastic. And it adds a whole nother element to this. And it just, man, it's all part of that juxtaposition with the site, but at the same time is such a part of the site.
And isn't that sumac beautiful?
Yeah, it is. I mean, they really are. We don't ever plan on stepping on this. We're going to let it do its thing.
So what did you think of the Iron Garden? That's the only place to get that amazing view of Carrie Furnace. Now behind me, how many of you hate Rose of Sharon? Well, guess what? I love it. I talk about this every year, about my love for Rose of Sharon, because so many people do hate it. And this year, it's just gone crazy. I love to float around in that pool and see those flowers and the bees on there. Yes, it makes lots of babies. Yes, it's a weed, but I just love having something in bloom this time of the year, and it's just one of my favorite trees. I actually brought some from my old garden 26 years ago. What do you think?
You should grow this. Really?
Of all the plants we've talked about for You Should Grow This, this is my favorite perennial, called Corydalis lutea. It has this amazing long bloom time from April all the way till November, maybe even December. It forms a beautiful colony just by throwing seeds, so no invasive underground runners. It'll grow in shade, dry shade, and sun, and the deer are not interested in it. This is a plant you should look at. It doesn't really have a common name, so maybe that's why it's not as popular as it should be, but you get 1 gallon pot of Corydalis lutea, and after 2 or 3 years, you're gonna have a beautiful colony, and you're gonna thank me.
My question is, what kind of plants should you not have in your garden that would attract ticks?
Deborah, that's a great question, and there's only one plant that I know of that specifically we should not grow because it attracts ticks, and that's called barberry. We shouldn't be growing barberry anyway because it's an invasive, and being a tick magnet, remove it from the garden and never plant it. Thanks for your question.
Now it's time for Talking Trees from the Davey Tree Expert Company. I'm joined again by Luke Werner. He's a district manager at the North Pittsburgh office of the Davey Tree Expert Company. And Luke, I'm so glad when you come because I'm looking at all these problems and you're solving them for me. So the rhododendron, all this bottom stuff was eaten by deer, and this is all new growth, and I'm worried about what that is going to do to the shrub. Does it have enough energy to push out all that new growth and be okay?
Yeah, I mean, plants are really resilient, and a lot of times you're surprised on what they can really overcome. What you want to make sure is they have enough water, throughout the growing season that they can push out that new growth, because that new growth does take a lot of energy.
Well, we haven't got much rain, so I guess I'll have to go drag the hose out here, huh?
Yeah.
And then wait for hunting season.
There you go.
And right above you, I'm worried about this maple tree. It's got all sorts of spots on it.
It does. The nice thing with maple trees is they're very tough. A lot of their leaf diseases that they do get.
I mean, look at that thing.
It is, and they can get spots here. There's a couple different things going on. Some of this is a little bit of tar spot. It really isn't that big of an issue. It's more aesthetic than it is detrimental to the health of the tree.
So don't even treat it. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, if it has things repeatedly, like year after year, where it's getting these diseases, then you can take some precautions to kind of help it.
So I know when a homeowner brings you in, you come for free. How often does it happen like this where there's nothing to do when you're out at a property?
It happens frequently, but it might be that there's nothing to do with what they wanted us to come out to look at.
Yeah.
So that's a nice thing about having an arborist walk your property, is maybe nothing's going on with that maple tree, but we noticed some storm damage in the maple tree in the backyard that needs to be addressed.
That's why I love having you here.
Yeah. Good to be here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
For more information about everything we talked about today, go to DougOster.com. I've got all sorts of different videos and garden information there. Until next week, keep planting, and we'll see you then.